Hey, Diana, did you know that being wildly profitable as a law firm can be good for your client?
Mark, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. Hello, everyone. I am Marc Whitehead, your co-host, along with my brilliant co-host, Diana Berry, my Chief Operating Officer. And today we're going to talk about what all lawyers seem to want to talk about every time I am around them. They want to talk about marketing. They want to talk about how can I actually get more cases? How can I get better cases? So today we're going to break away from our traditional podcast where we talk about a specific book and how we apply it to the law firm. And today we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about how we as a law firm market to generate clients.
This is actually a subject that's near and dear to your heart, thankfully, because marketing is not necessarily one of my favorite things. So I'm glad you have a passion for marketing and intake. You're actually known, and I think we've kind of alluded to your marketing plan.
Yes.
You're in a prior episode. So this is dedicated specifically, this entire episode's talking about that.
Yes. So I have a marketing plan. If you wait till the end of the podcast, I will...
we'll talk more about that. But
yeah.
Why is it important?
Okay.
I guess is why is marketing so important?
First of all, let's back up a little bit to the ideal of being wildly profitable. I've always preached that it is a law firm's ethical duty to be wildly profitable. And people are like, what do you mean it's our ethical duty? Think about it. Especially in a contingency fee law firm, where your revenue is based off of your success and the success for your client. You know, our interests with our clients are aligned. We're not a billable practice. You know, we're not just cranking out hours for no specific end. Everything we do is aligned towards our client's interest. The more we make from our client, the more we make for us. And what happens is when a law firm is wildly profitable, that in the end benefits the clients and your future clients. You're able to hire better staff. You're able to implement better technology. You know, if you're a litigator, you're able to hire better experts on your cases. You're able to hold out for top dollar when litigating or trying to settle a case. You don't have to take the lowball offer because your rent is due. So you alleviate all of those financial pressures that sometimes cause lawyers, you know, to take shortcuts.
Yeah, exactly. Not act in the best interest of the client.
I can show you multiple examples of lawyers who got disbarred. You look at the back of the Texas Bar Journal, which is the first place I go to see if any of my friends have been disbarred or disciplined. It's good happy hour type reading. And I will guarantee you that the lawyers out there that get into trouble with the state ethics board, it's not because they went to law school with the design, hey, I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to become an unethical lawyer. Nobody ever goes to law school with that thought in their mind. What happens is that these lawyers, they get into financial trouble. I guarantee you, every one of these lawyers that get into the back of the State Bar Journal have some sort of financial problem, and it causes them to take shortcuts. It causes them to dip into their trust fund. It causes them to take work that they shouldn't be taking because they don't have the background or the expertise in that particular type of work. It causes them to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do because they simply need the cash.
Right.
So that's why I always say being profitable is actually an ethical responsibility that you have to your clients, both your current clients and to your future clients, because you want to provide the best service, you want to provide the best experience, you want to provide the best outcome, and you can really only do that if you're running a profitable shop. So that's my, I'll get off my soapbox. That's my preachiness. First of all, there's two ways to be profitable as a law firm. Number one, you need to maximize your revenue. Mm-hmm. And number two, you need to
cut your expenses.
You need to, not necessarily cut your expenses, watch your expenses, keep them reasonable, keep them in check. So today we're going to focus on the revenue side. Mm-hmm. We will save the expense side for some other episode. So how do you improve your firm revenue? Well, you either bring in more cases or you bring in better cases. But both of those require you to be able to market your firm. Marketing is really simple. There's basically two steps here. There is lead generation. In other words, creating interest in your firm enough that people will actually call you, generating the lead. Mm-hmm. And then there's the second part, lead conversion, which is to take that lead and do an effective job of converting that lead into a client. In our case, in a contingency fee world, to get them to sign on the dotted line. If you're a fee generating firm, to get that person to actually write you a check. But in either way, lead generation, lead conversion. In all the publications and all the real world publications, that's basically called marketing and sales. Lead generation is marketing, lead conversion is sales.
Yeah.
And of course, we've discussed this on the podcast prior. Sales is a dirty word in the legal industry, so we fake it and we call it intake. But intake is sales. It's the same thing. So anyway, I get on my soapbox and I talk about this a lot with lawyers. Every lawyer I talk to, they're always belly aching. They need more cases. They need bigger cases. And the first question I ask everybody, I said, fine, but when that lead walks into the door, do you have an effective way to convert that lead into a case? In other words, do you have a good sales department? Do you have a good intake department or a good intake process? That's number one. I have 6 key strategies, and we'll talk about the 6 key strategies today throughout the podcast. But the number one strategy is, and my mantra is, never spend a single dollar on marketing your firm until you have your intake process locked down. What's the point of spending money to generate leads if you waste your leads, if you can't get that person converted? That means different things for different size law firms. If you're a very small shop, maybe the lawyer is the one that's converting that lead into a signed case. Okay, well, are you a choke point? I remember the days when I used to do it all. I used to litigate the cases. I used to mediate the cases. I used to do the depots. I used to sign up all the clients. Well, guess what? I was a choke point when it came to the lead conversion process, because the client had to make an appointment that fit my schedule. Mm-hmm. Well, that just doesn't work anymore.
Right.
In the days of instant gratification, in the days of Amazon, and all of the other instant gratification vehicles out there, people just don't have the patience. They're not going to sit and wait for you to make an appointment, in a couple of days or a week or, God help us, longer to sign up a case. They're going to move on to the next person.
You call a competitor.
You've got to respond within 5 minutes. You've got to get that person hooked into your firm some way, somehow. Mm-hmm. You got to get that person into your sales funnel immediately, or they're simply going to go to the next person in their Google search. So that's the first thing I always talk to people about when they complain about they don't have enough cases. It's like, how do you convert the leads that you currently get? Lawyers always underestimate how big of a loss rate they have when it comes to their leads. They're like, oh, I sign up every case that comes to me that I want. No, you don't. You don't even know how many leads that you have that walked out the door that you never even talked to. Mm-hmm. Because somewhere in your system, either your receptionist dropped the ball or nobody responded to a form that was filled out on your website. these are things that you don't even know that are happening in your own law firm. I can guarantee it. I've spent years working on this. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars working with consultants on developing our intake process. And we still don't have it perfect, even after all the effort that we put into. So I know that, people are bleeding money left and right by not converting their leads as efficiently as they possibly could. I feel like I've been in a soapbox here for the last 5 minutes. I want to try to get off my soapbox and start talking about some practical realities here. Help me. Diana, bring me off my soapbox.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue actually into our next segment, to where you can actually talk about the 6 strategies, because I want to hear more about the 6 strategies and some of your lessons learned. I think that there's a TV lesson in there with your intake, because that's definitely something. It was a hard lesson we learned right around COVID. So we'll be back.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right, so let's talk a little bit. We alluded to it in the last segment, the 6 strategies. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with the first strategy, and I kind of already beat that horse in segment 1, but it is to have an efficient intake system and an intake process. So I kind of go back to the mistakes I've made over the last 30-something years. Back in the day, back when I first started doing television, I didn't have a big budget, but we were running TV on various types of cases, and I did not have an intake team set up specifically to handle those calls, which was a massive mistake, basically a massive flush of money down the toilet. I had a receptionist who not only was answering for, the courts calling or current clients calling or God knows what, we're making copies or doing whatever. She was also answering the phone for the television calls. And I kept wondering why the phone wasn't ringing. Well, the reality is the phone was ringing. She wasn't trained and she wasn't set up to be successful at screening a bunch of TV leads that came in. I mean, she didn't even have a schedule in front of her to know when the TV commercials were running.
Yeah.
That wasn't her fault. That was my fault.
Right.
That was just me flushing money down the toilet. And then I can take it a step further. Several decades later, we ran a big national TV campaign.
Right when I started.
Right when you started. And at that point, I had an intake team set up. But the problem is that it wasn't staffed up to handle a national TV campaign. And what we noticed is all of a sudden our answering service bill, which should be about $5,000 a month, exploded to about $20,000 a month. And what happened was all of those phone calls started rolling over to the answering service because we just couldn't catch them. Again, big mistake on my part, big flushing of thousands of dollars down the toilet, both in terms of money for the answering service, money on wasted leads, lost opportunities. I'm sure there was some goal in those leads that we could have converted that we just simply didn't convert.
Or maybe just stayed in uncontacted.
Yeah.
We just never really got to them.
We just never got to them or didn't get back to them fast enough.
And so therefore your ROI probably on your TV, we still don't even know.
Right, exactly. We don't know whether it really would have worked or not. We ended up stopping the national TV campaign because it wasn't working, but why was it working? Was it our fault? Was it the TV's fault? What was the problem? We really are still not sure to this day. Lesson learned.
Exactly.
Lesson learned. You always have to match your marketing budget and your marketing efforts with your capacity to handle the potential calls.
The strength of your intake team.
Right. You have to match it. You also have to cut down the friction points. You have to make it easy. I always call it the easy button. We need to set up an easy button for the client. The client, part of the elements of our easy button with our intake process, the client doesn't have to come into the office. Everything we do now is electronic signature, so the client can sign on their cell phone. If somebody needs to actually go out and physically visit the client, then somebody can go physically visit the client. The client can come into the office if they want to. Rarely do they ever want to, I've noticed. But you do everything you can to limit the friction of converting the client into an actual case.
And one of the things I think you've done recently is kind of staggering your intake, our in-house intake. We have always had the answering service, right? But now we have more of our own intake team working at different hours, whether that's from 10 to 7 or to 6, 10 to different hours.
And weekend coverage.
Exactly.
You have to meet the client where they are. It's too easy for them to bounce to the next person on their Google search. So you can't, it can't be 9 to 5. It has to be something that matches their schedule. That's the kind of the key to that.
So what's our second strategy, Marc?
So the second strategy is basically how do you generate interest to the public at large.
Okay.
So that's what I would call traditional advertising. So we mentioned one, television, that we've done extensively over the years. We're not currently doing it at the moment. We've kind of taken a hiatus, but very well may be in our future as well. There's radio. Never done radio, but a lot of people have a lot of success with that. There's public media. There's outdoor billboards, which we've dabbled with, but not very seriously. But then what we really do to get out to the general public is over what I call the interweb thingy.
Google gods?
Yeah, the Google gods, both the free Google God and the paid Google God. Your SEO work, we have an extensive amount of search engine optimization work that we do on our web properties. And you have to think about them that way. They are property. But we do an extensive amount just to get searched and found naturally. And then we do paid search. Local service ads are a thing. Then you have pay-per-click, which is a different thing.
Yep.
You have retargeting, which is a different thing. But you have all of these, what I call digital methods of reaching people. Social media. You have, organic social media. You also have paid social media. So these are all ways that you can actually spend money and get your name out in the public rather quickly. But it requires...
Or it can be free. I mean, if you just want to set up an Instagram account for your firm, you can do that, right?
Yeah, but that's not really... I just can tell you that the free social media, it's good for your friends. It makes your mom feel good. It's not very effective in terms of generating...
And probably good use of your time.
Business.
So you invest a lot of money, and I think that it needs to be said. We have a vendor for our SEO and our website, right?
Yes.
And a vendor for social media, a vendor for maybe not for our social media, says our director, maybe a vendor for
We have brought that in-house. We have brought the social media stuff in-house.
All the LSA, all the Google stuff, paid Google.
Yeah, the paid Google, we have a vendor. LSAs we do in-house.
So it ends up being a massive kind of structure underneath your marketing for the public at the end of the day, not just our in-house team.
Right. So you need both vendors and you need a good in-house team to do it. You're going to be spending a lot of money on this. Mm-hmm. This is not free, but it is quick. And so there's a trade-off here. You're trading time for money. The less time you want to wait to develop that flow of cases, the more you're going to have to spend. Which kind of leads me to strategy 3, which is the reverse of this. This is actually relatively cheap and or free, depending on how you do it. But it's going to take some time and it's going to take some effort. And that is marketing to other professionals. Now, specifically for us, that means marketing to other attorneys. Mm-hmm. Every attorney has their own herd. And what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to tap into that other attorney's herd.
What do you mean by that?
So we do disability work, which is, I would call, adjacent to personal injury work. We're very similar. We're representing people who have injuries or disabilities, but we're trying to provide for them with different systems. Like they're in the tort system, the PI lawyers are in the tort system. We are in the disability benefits system. PI lawyers are a good referral source for us because we don't directly compete with them. You know, we don't threaten them. So they are happy to send their clients over to us. And we frequently work with PI lawyers. Well, they have the PI side of the case and we have the disability side of the case. There could be other professional groups out there as well. So, I know a lot of PI lawyers market to doctors and chiropractors and physical therapists.
Pain clinics.
And clinics. So I kind of lump all of that into professional referrals or you know, and there's a whole marketing campaign behind that. You know, a lot of it is just pressing the flesh. It's getting out, getting known, letting them know what your specialty is.
Oh, so like when we go to for example, the HTLA, the Houston Trial Lawyers Association golf tournament, and different sponsors for different holes so that you can just get to know different types of chiropractors and those types of things?
Well, I'm not so much interested in the chiropractors. That's not our niche. But for a PI lawyer, the chiropractors would be a niche. For us, the lawyers themselves are the niche.
So when you say pressing the flesh for our firm, what do you mean?
I mean going out and meeting lawyers and making friends with other lawyers and explaining to them what we do, how we are different from what they do, and then you educate them on the type of clients that you're looking for, okay? Now, that's the one-on-one part of this. That takes time, effort. But then you have to follow up with it because memories fade. They forget. They meet other people. You know, typically lawyers refer to the last person that they talk to. They just have that last
top
person.
of mind type
Top
thing.
of mind mentality. So to overlay the personal work that we do, we have a specific newsletter called the Successful Barrister, i.e. where this podcast came from, that goes out to a list of about 4,500 lawyers. And it could be anybody that's listening to this podcast. If you'd like to be on the list, let us know. So not only do I press the flesh with these group of lawyers, there's about 4,500 lawyers. I didn't go buy this list or anything. These are lawyers that over the last 30 years I have some connection with. Either we're both members of the trial lawyers organizations or AAJ or Atticus or PILMA. They could be lawyers that were on the other side of cases, defense counsel on the other side of cases. All of my mother's friends, my mom's a lawyer, so all of her friends are lawyers. So, you know, I'm Brenda's boy. So, you know, just over the years, I've developed a list of about 4,500 lawyers.
And we encourage our attorneys to. I add to the list whenever I go to different conferences.
Always adding to the list, but we mailed the Successful Barrister newsletter to that group. And the Successful Barrister all has to deal with marketing, management, life skills. It probably won't get you disbarred.
We do that quarterly? 6 times a year?
6 times a year.
To stay top of mind.
To stay top of mind. You know, and we don't write about what we do. We don't write about disability law. No lawyer wants to hear about that. That's just boring as hell. You know, they want to hear about the stuff they want to hear about.
We love what we do.
We love what we do, but
other
we know
lawyers
you
probably
don't,
exactly.
You don't care. You don't care. We know you don't care.
And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, so it's unique in that regard. We're not really trying to really bore you with the last book that we read. We're trying to offer a unique perspective. Maybe a little sarcastic.
Maybe a little snarky, a little sarcastic, kind of fun. You know, everybody has a caricature. It's full of, it almost looks like a cartoon book, which is by design to make it interesting.
So I think you do a really great job of the marketing to the professional groups, and I think that could probably be its own podcast. Are we up on 4 now?
So 4 would be the next group, which is marketing to your client base.
Okay.
Which is a different group than marketing to attorneys. So like we have a newsletter that goes out to our client base. So we stay top of mind with our client. But it is a very different newsletter. Yeah. We wouldn't dare send the Successful Barrister newsletter to our client base.
No.
That would be just
wrong.
On
every level.
On many levels, that would just be wrong.
We do print and email though, right?
We do print, we do email, we do news blasts. We do webinars on topics of interest to our client base.
Oh, like the town halls.
We do town halls. Everything we can do to stay in front of that group of people. And now after 30 years, I think our list is somewhere around 20,000 or so names. So we market, that's our herd. We have a herd of about 20,000 clients and former clients that we just keep pumping our message into.
And it's a different message, to your point. So, I mean, very specifically, sometimes it's recipes, right? So like around Thanksgiving, we'll share a personal recipe. It's new additions to the team. So we usually have, I think a college intern, or if one stays with us for a number of years, we'll mention his or her contributions to the firm upon graduation, because they want to get to know us, right? And so that message stays a little consistent, actually very consistent through our social media. You'll find our birthday posts, whereas there is no mention of my birthday in the Successful Barrister, thankfully.
So it's two parts. So you have to have a mix when marketing to your client database. Number one, there needs to be some amount of personality and basically having them get to know you as a person and get to know the firm as a group of people that are dedicated. The second half is basically articles of interest to that particular population. So we're dealing with a population of people that are disabled. So we will write articles about the goings on with the Social Security Administration.
We like to repost your tax article around April.
Yeah,
March,
every April we always get tax questions. So we write an article about the taxability of disability benefits around that time of year. Things that are of interest to that particular group. But then we will throw other things in there. Like, so for example, when the mass tort 3M earplug mass tort came out for basically defective earplugs for veterans. Well, we have a population of veterans. So we started publishing articles about this mass tort that was out there specific to veterans. We did the same thing for Camp Lejeune when the Camp Lejeune litigation basically sprung up from the PAC Act. And we were able to develop some of those cases through that. We've actually done it for other attorneys. Like I've had asbestos attorneys. Okay, hey, Mark, when you write an article about asbestos, like I'll have them write the article, but then we'll put it in our newsletter and it'll generate some interest, and then we can refer those cases back to that particular attorney. We've done that in the past. So there's a balance. There's a fine, you have to give them some humanity, some personality, but then you also have to provide them with some stuff that's interesting to them. What I said that social media is not very good for generating cases. It's not great for generating cases from the public at large, at least from my experience. It is possible, but I'm saying that's not great. But using social media to stay top of mind with our 20,000 person herd of clients, you can actually use social media to kind of pump into that group as well. And I think that's actually a more effective use.
It's just hard to calculate ROI with social media marketing.
Yeah, you can't. You just have to.
You just really don't know where they really saw you
no,
from. Because they might have seen you on Instagram and then went to your website and they'll say website. So, all right, what's number 5, Mark?
So number 5 would be community relations. And this is one where you really do have a hard time calculating your return on investment. So we try to stay involved with various disease advocacy groups because, again, we're representing a client base that typically is disabled because of a disease. So heart disease, lupus, Parkinson's, MS, things like that. Those all have disease advocacy groups out there working, in various capacities as a service organization to people that have that disease, as a fundraising organization to try to develop funds to find a cure for these types of diseases. And these groups are good groups for us personally to get involved with because that's our client base. Mm-hmm. How do we measure if that is successful or not? Honestly, it's really hard. Yeah. It's really hard to know. I know that we wrote a white paper once, it was for MS, I believe, and we got the MS Society to link to our white paper, and that certainly gave us some link juice for our website. It got us people clicking on this particular white paper. I think that the title was How to Get Disability Benefits for Multiple Sclerosis. So, it directly marketed our services to a very specialty niche group that, quite frankly, we see a lot of MS cases. So that was a way that, we kind of move into that community relationship group. I mean, we also do other things. We have scholarship programs that kind of get us out in the community. We try to volunteer for things as a law firm from time to time.
And I would say that's kind of our twofold thing that, it's just good for our firm culture to have these types of opportunities. Kind of brings us out together outside of the firm. And it's part of our 5-year goal to kind of do more of these things as a firm. And
they are. The side benefit is it's a good team building exercise.
Exactly.
Even if you're not necessarily generating clients directly from it, it is good for your team culture, your team morale. So the final part, strategy 6, I believe we are on, is what I call the specialty niche strategy. So what we did is we went back and just kind of did a survey on our highest producing, our best cases in terms of a dollar amount. In other words, what cases do we make the most money on? And it was fairly obvious that the niche was disabled doctors and dentists. And I'm not talking about marketing to them for a referral. I'm talking about marketing to them for them to actually be your client. So in our world, in the disability world, our highest value client is a disabled doctor or a disabled dentist because they have private insurance policies, disability insurance policies, that can be fairly lucrative from our perspective. It's also very easy for a doctor or a dentist to become disabled under the terms of the policy. So think about it. You get any doctor or dentist that gets any sort of neurological issue, some sort of shakes in the hand, a disc injury to their neck or something that affects their ability to use their hands and fingers. I don't want that dentist doing a root canal on me.
Yeah. Or surgery of any kind.
So when they develop even the slightest physical problem, they're toast in terms of their professional career. And that's when the disability policy kicks in. And of course, insurance companies, being insurance companies, love to deny those claims, and hence that's where we come in. So we've developed, or have tried to develop over time, a specialty marketing program, marketing directly to doctors and dentists. We've actually written a book specifically targeted at doctors and another book specifically targeted at dentists about how they can win their disability claims. And of course, we're using this as a promotion to convince these doctors and dentists out there to hire us as their attorney. So I think everybody, if they go back and kind of look, what are your highest value cases? Figure out a special way, so sort of like a separate side campaign to just go just for the highest value cases. And that's hard for some people. I know PI lawyers, I see it all the time. The rage over the last 5 years is, they're no longer car wreck lawyers. They're all trucking accident lawyers because they've done the same thing. They figured out that their highest value cases are trucking accident cases. The problem is they're all doing it.
Yeah.
It's like,
so it's no longer a niche.
It's no longer a niche. It now is just the norm. So I don't have a good solution for that. I'm not in the PI world anymore. But I kind of think that everybody could kind of drill down and figure out a way to find some specialty niche that is a high value niche that really doesn't have a lot of competition. I think if you think about it, there's one lawyer I know, he's developed a specialty for representing gunshot victims. I don't even know who he's suing. I have no idea what the claim is about, but that's his niche. And I'm like,
wow.
I don't know anybody else is doing it. Sounds good to me, and sounds, he seems to be doing okay with it. So that would be strategy 6.
One that we're still working on.
Yeah, not perfected. Haven't perfected that strategy at all. This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze. In this final segment, let's talk a little bit about measuring your marketing results.
How do you know it's working?
How do you know it's working? I mean, if you're spending a lot of money on these various things,
You're getting a lot of calls.
You're getting a lot of calls.
But
So the concept is ROI, return on my investment.
and what do you look for in an ROI?
In my opinion, this is just me. I mean, this isn't a contingency fee world. You would like to see a return on your investment at least 5, 6, 7 to 1. So in other words, if I spend $1 in marketing, I would like to get $5 in return. I'd prefer 6. I'd really love 7. 10 would be awesome.
Do you ever get 10 then?
No.
Okay.
Well, yes. Actually, I take that back. Yes, we do.
In the Google world.
In the Google world, we do. But the question is, how do you know? So I would say the first thing we do is that we use call tracking numbers and vanity URLs and landing pages, which are basically the digital version of a call tracking number, for all of our different marketing channels. Now, when I refer to a marketing channel, that means just a methodology for getting leads. So TV's a marketing channel, the internet's a marketing channel, PPC's a marketing channel, LSA's a marketing channel, marketing to lawyers specifically is a marketing channel, marketing to your client base is a marketing channel.
So in actuality, like just in the layman's terms, what you're saying is that the client newsletter that goes out hard copy to our clients has a different phone number than appears on our website, than appears maybe on our Successful Barrister. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. So even within the client marketing process, we may have different phone numbers. Like we may have a different phone number on our printed newsletter than we may have on our magnet calendar that we send out once a year.
And what does that get you?
So what it tells you, so all right, let's say, for example, at the end of the year, I spend $12,000 mailing out a magnet calendar, which sticks on the refrigerator to all my clients. Okay? That's one of our marketing channels. It has its own phone number on that magnet. So when they call from that phone number, it goes into our software system.
Litify.
Which is Litify, and there's another layer on that called Zapier, which actually helps it integrate. And I'm not going to get too much into the weeds of software, but God help me. But the point is, I can tell how many people called, so I can tell my cost per lead. So if I spent $12,000 for that mailing and I get 1,000 leads out of it, I know those leads cost me $12 per lead. Then I can do the math further. Of those 1,000 leads that piece generated, let's say I signed up 10% of those leads. Let's say I signed up 100 cases. So now I know that it cost me $120 per signed case. What is a case worth for me? Well, if that case is worth, $1,000, that's roughly an 8-to-1 return. If just on those numbers. Those numbers are fairly fictitious because I'm just pulling them out of my rear at the moment. But
I'm just impressed you can do math that quickly. I'm good with that.
I'm using numbers that I already have worked up once before.
Well, I was going to give that one to you, Marc.
I know.
So, but then recently, what I started seeing more, not just on our marketing materials, but just everywhere, QR codes. Is that work the same way?
QR codes can work the same way.
So you can track them by whatever you sent to the case manager. Okay, very cool.
So, for example, last year we probably spent, I don't know, maybe $100,000 marketing to our client, roughly 100. And from that we know that we got, I don't know how many cases, and then we put a value on each of these cases. So one of the things we do is we value cases in real time. So we value, a Social Security disability case at roughly $2,000 to $3,000.
Okay.
And even though it may be 18 months, 2 years before we collect, and it might be a zero, it might be $7,000 or $8,000. We don't know, but we know law of large numbers on average. This is what we would expect on a typical case. So I can tell in real time that if I signed up 10 of these cases this month from this particular source, that this source generated me $20,000, $30,000 in revenue. Mm-hmm. So I can figure that in real time. Sometimes it's harder, say, for example, in a personal injury world, it may be harder to guess what a case is worth, but I think you can do it within a reasonable proximity. But so we're always doing math. What is our return on our investment? So I know our highest return on investment are typically our SEO work typically has about a 15 to 20 to 1 return on its investment. Is by far the most cost efficient thing that we do. The problem is it's not very scalable. You can only do so much.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do to promote a website from an SEO perspective. Then there's, I think the second best return on our investment has been our attorney marketing campaign. That is typically around a 10 to 1 return on our investment. For every dollar we spend, we typically get about $10 back. I would say our client marketing campaign, which encompasses a couple of different things, is probably right below the ROI on the attorney, probably somewhere in 8 to 9 to 1 return on our investment. And I've seen this. So one of the things about being a lawyer coach is you get to not only look at your own firm, you get to look at other people's firms. And I have consistently seen those as the top 3 amongst most law firms that I've looked at.
That's very helpful to know.
The top 3 things that you're ever going to do are your SEO work, your attorney referral or your professional referral network, and your client database. Those are always going to be your best return on investments. So everything else gets judged by those. So then you go into like television, which, if you can get 3 to 1 on TV, maybe 4 to 1, you're doing good. That's been my experience.
And how long do you allow yourself to calculate an ROI, and especially on the new one? So TV was an experiment. We did a few experiments last year. LSA maybe might have been, I don't know if we're still doing LSA, but spent some money there. How long do you allow your experiments to run before you say, yep, this is more or less what my ROI should be, and I'm going to cut it or I'm going to keep it?
That's a hard question because sometimes you're just bleeding forever. Yeah. So for example, our latest PPC endeavor, it started out fairly weak at like 2 to 1, and then it got to 2.5 to 1, and then it got to 3 to 1, and maybe it's doing a little bit better now. So we keep seeing progress. It keeps getting a little better because we were able to refine it and make it tighter and figure out all the variables involved in making that work, and we get it. So I keep doing it even though it doesn't meet my standard because I keep hoping that because I keep seeing progress, versus other things where you see no progress. It kind of is like you get like a 2 to 1 return, which isn't very good, and it just stays at 2 to 1. Well, for something that you're not seeing any progress on, we'll generally try to kill it within 3 to 6 months.
That was billboards for us, right?
Well, we hung out with billboards a little bit longer, and we don't do mass billboards. We did very targeted billboards. Our billboards were specific to veterans' disability, and they specifically were placed right in front of veterans' hospitals, so they're very targeted.
Or the bus stop, yeah.
Yeah, right there, specifically targeting a specific geographic area for a specific reason, which is not the way people run billboards up and down the highway. And we did that for a couple of years. And we hoped that it would get better, and it just kind of stayed flatlined.
And TV was an easier decision just simply because of the cost you were putting in monthly. So you probably didn't hang out with that one. No, you actually did do a 6-month.
Well, it kind of depends. So I go back in time. So back in the early 2000s, we ran TV for years and years and years, and it was effective. But the problem is over time, it became less and less effective as TV fragmented. Now you have 500 channels. So the viewership fragmented, plus the competition went up. So your cost per case went up, and the cost per case got to a point where, why should I spend this much, on a case when I can get it so much cheaper, doing digital marketing?
Right.
So you always look at what's my best alternative and exhaust that before you move on to your next best alternative. Then you exhaust that. So in any event, you always have to be looking at things. And the numbers bounce in the short run. They tend to average out over the long run. So the longer you try something, the truer the number you get. Mm-hmm. So if you can stick it out a while, if you're seeing improvement or at least reasonable numbers, 1 month's worth of data is almost meaningless. 2 months is a little better. Usually a minimum of 3 months worth of data before you can make any rational decision. And it's just the more months you add to it, the better data you get, the better decision you're going to make.
This has been a very insightful episode, Marc. Clearly your passion. Where can we get if any of our listeners want the marketing plan?
Okay, so let me back up a little bit. So I developed, and I will credit the late Stephen Fairley, an old friend of mine. He ran a lawyer marketing group from years ago, and I sort of co-opted his idea with his permission. So I created a marketing template, and it basically is every ideal I ever had for how to market. And you can pick and choose whether you want to do it or not. It has grown to, including the preface paper that goes with it, it has grown to over 50 pages in length.
Wow.
So what I offer to people, I offer to email it to them in Word format. And you want it in Word format because
so you can edit it.
You want to take it and make it your own.
Yeah.
Take my name off of it, slap your name on it, present it to your people, present it to your marketing folks, do whatever you want to do it. Cut out the pieces that don't apply to you. But this is a freebie that I give to everybody that asks. Now, you have to email me first. And you know what happens when you email me? You get on my list. See, this is marketing. You want something, you got to give me something back. So I tell everybody, email me. Again, my email is Marc spelled with a C. So it's marc@marcwhitehead.com. And just say, hey, Marc, love to have a copy of your marketing template. And I'll be happy to email it to you in Word format. Take it, make it your own. Give me some suggestions.
Yeah.
I will say that it is a little dated on the social media side because I haven't updated the social media side in probably about 2 years. So I would love to hear people's suggestion especially on those types of things, because I'm always adding to it. It's a living, breathing document.
So that means that if I got it a couple of years ago, I can ask for it again?
Yeah, if you get it again, it
nice
will probably be a little bit more updated. So
very cool. Well, very insightful podcast.
Okay. With that, we need to get out of here. I'm getting the high sign from our director/producer/wonderful Miss Everything. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Marc.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. Remember to rate and review us at your favorite podcast site. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, tell your friends about it, pass it around. And visit us at thesuccessfulbarrister.com. And also remember to visit our sponsor, my law firm, Marc Whitehead Associates, at disabilitydenials.com. Until then, we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.